I wanted to make just three major remarks, three major comments. I have a few slides to share, and then I will pass it on to Mike for the discussion. What matters to me, and I don't know, the three major remarks that I thought is number one, it seems to me that today when we talk about AI or Vision Pro since last week, or generative general AI, or metaverse, or blockchain, we spent in the last year or two, especially in the last 6 months, we spent more time talking about the means rather than the ends. That means we get all excited that there was GPT-3 and there is GPT-4 that is so much more powerful. And did you know that BART is doing so much better than ChatGPT-4? And did you know that Caspar is doing better than both of these together? And so there is if you look at the news cycle, and if you sort of like wanted to bucket in a way, hype into sort of one big bucket, it is all about those means. And I thought, here we and the team here at Vivaldi, Vivaldi is a consulting company I founded 23 years ago here in New York, and we work here in the city and across Europe. And we thought we should have this conversation here, not talking about the means, but about the ends. Namely, the ends being, how do you think about your company, or how do you think about your brands? And what does it mean for the next year? There was a study being done with 3,000 executives, CEOs, by a company called, a consulting company as well in the city called Alex Partners. And that consulting company found among 3,000 executives that 98% of these executives believe that today they see that over the next 3 years they need to reinvent their business, rethink their brand, reimagine the processes in their operations, how they go to consumers and so forth. That's a whopping statistic to me. But you know what was even more interesting? 85% said, I have no clue how I go about doing that. I mean, this is amazing. You know, there is a real hype, yes, in terms of the means, in terms of the technology, in terms of the changes, in terms of the investment, in terms of VC capital and private equity that goes into artificial intelligence. But it is about the ends we don't know. So this evening, we spend more about those ends. What does it mean for the business? And Mike, courtesy with Mike, uses his talents to help us facilitate that conversation. The second point I want to make is that, at least in my point of view, and I'm just one person, but I have always found that when technologies sort of are hyped up, you need to take it with a sort of grain of salt. You know, we went through 3D printing, and I thought by now some computer or somebody 3D prints me a home. It hasn't happened exactly yet. You know, we went through all these robots that we will be all governed one day by robots. It hasn't happened either. So there is a lot of IoT. There is a lot of technologies that are being discussed. And I actually think, that's my second point, it's not just about the technology that matters. You know what really matters is when technologies meet a new business model. When that happens, it's like a Cambrian, if you will, explosion or revolution. Think about it. I mean, if you're old enough, in the year 2000, Amazon was just 5 years. They sold books. If you remember, Jeff Bezos said, I want to be the largest, the earth's largest bookstore, he says. By 2000, he switched his mindset. He says, I don't want to be just the largest bookstore. I want to be the largest of anything, right? Of groceries, of anything you can buy online. But what really happened there is, in 2000, there was a new technology that came available, cloud computing, if you remember, and what became known as AWS, the technology of of Amazon. And it was that technology that created a new business model. And the business model that Amazon invented was e-commerce, but a different kind called a marketplace, where there are 2 million sellers on Amazon. This is not Amazon products. These are from 2 million sellers. And then there are millions of us, 100 million of prime consumers like you and me, that sort of find themselves in a marketplace, in a matching marketplace. If you know, Amazon has never made money in the core online retail business. Never. They lose a lot of money in their own business. They make all their money on AWS, the technology, and that marketplace, where they basically match. That matching is a new business model called marketplaces, two-sided marketplaces. Look at Google. If you're old enough, then you know that when Google started, and when Web 1.0 came around, hell, you couldn't read anything on there. You needed to be a computer scientist to read anything. You find anything. And then there was, in 98, 97, 99, there was Inktomi, there was Yahoo, some Yahoo guys from the West Coast. Then there was Lycos, there was Overture, and then there was these 2 Stanford PhDs that created Google. And they created a model, what's called a search engine. So here was the technology, the search engine they invented. And then it wasn't much happening. Everybody was competing. It was very similar to today. ChatGPT, BART, Casper, whatever, Symphony, or whatever the AI technology is. But what really happened, and when really things changed, is when Google discovered to use advertising, namely the keywords, and then suddenly everything changed. Who won the game? Google won the game. Same thing with Apple. You know, if you remember, Apple in the iPhone started in 2007. Did you know that when Apple started in 2007, all of us go like, very similar like last week, Monday, when you saw the launch of the Vision Pro. You said like, what is this about? I already use a Nokia. That was 2007. And by the way, it costs 4 times more than a Nokia. Why would I ever buy something 4 times more than a Nokia? Just like last week you said, why would I ever wear some ski goggles and pay $3,500 for it? It's insane. You know, for what purpose? And when you look in 2007, nobody had a clue for what to use the smartphone for, except for mobile phones. And for that one, you already had a Nokia. What happened? Between 2007 and 2009, Apple said, hey, we have a problem. The thing doesn't sell. So how are we going to get this to sell? Well, Apple says, we need software. We need apps so that the smartphone is useful beyond the phone, you know. So, but Apple says, well, I don't know, we don't know, we are not software engineers, we are product engineers. We don't know how to do software. So what did Apple do? They created an app store so that developers could actually produce the software for the iPhone and made the iPhone useful. Today, there are 34 million developers in the world that write software apps, 34 million on one side for 1.37 billion humans, let's call it in the world of AI. Humans, which is basically as many people have as an iPhone. There are 7.8 million users out there, but there is the market share of Apple is about 18-20% in terms of things. So and for those 1.4 billion more or less humans, these developers created things. So Apple created a new business model called the App Store. That's what's called a network or also a marketplace, and that became the success. When that became successful, we got all addicted to the iPhone. So my second point is that you need to find a solution where you need to find something where the technology actually meets a business model, and then actually things will happen. Finally, if you look at those three examples, my third point of today is this: value in business is not created anymore in the activities of the firm. If you're old enough like me, then you know that value has been created through better marketing, better manufacturing, better supply chain, better raw materials. And if you string those things perfectly together, you get a better value-added product for which consumers will pay something. That is the typical way how business operates. I have a better store, better service personnel, better products, and therefore I have a better retail experience, and therefore I can buy a better price. That's the old model. Value today is not created through activities and the improvement or optimization of activities, but value is created through interactions. Those are the 3 points I want to emphasize today. Number 1, and number 2, and number 3. Now, and then I have a conclusion, and we'll go from there. So I have a few slides, and that confirms what I just said, because otherwise you don't believe me. So let me just go with this. This one is an interesting one. A few things. This is Scott Pelley, if you know. I took this from a 60 minutes coverage of AI. You know, journalists are not very easy to impress with new stuff. Scott Pelley here, for the first time, experiences BART. BART is the ChatGPT version of Google, if you will. And he sort of, it's a language AI. Listen to what he just says, what he experiences as he sees the first time ChatGPT.
We played with a famous 6-word short story, often attributed to Hemingway. For sale, baby shoes, never worn.
Wow.
The only prompt we gave was finish this story. In 5 seconds. Holy cow. The shoes were a gift from my wife, but we never had a baby. From the 6-word prompt, BART created a deeply human tale with characters it invented, including a man whose wife could not conceive and a stranger grieving after a miscarriage and longing for closure. I am rarely speechless. I don't know what to make of this. Give me, we asked for the story in verse. In 5 seconds, there was a poem written by a machine with breathtaking insight into the mystery of faith. Bard wrote, she knew her baby's soul would always be alive. The humanity at superhuman speed was a shock. How is this possible?
You can imagine when somebody is in the writing business and suddenly realizes that, wow, I'm redundant here. You know, this thing is as good, can mimic or complete a Hemingway story. That's what we see right now, and I think that there is a reality to that. This is sort of a few metrics, if you will, of how powerful AI can be. ChatGPT passes the bar exam. It takes a medical doctor years of training, actually 4 years of medical training, and then residency, and then they finally, after all these years, pass the US medical license exam. And that what a doctor takes years to do, ChatGPT has done in 2 months. It's amazing, you know, how quickly, how smart these devices, these computers get. Whether it is the SL, how many of you are lawyers in here? There we go. You know, I hope you didn't spend a lot of time studying, because ChatGPT actually beats all of the years of studying in by 75%. So it's crazy. Any other test you do at GMAT when you go to IESE or to Harvard Business School, same thing there. Here's an interesting one. AI correctly diagnosed 85% in 80 minutes compared to top neurologists who achieve only 64 accuracy in 50 minutes. Think about it. If you go to a neurologist and you want to have a diagnosis, sir, my mobile phone is not allowed in my class. This is not German university. So if you think about it, the average correct diagnosis of a doctor, a neurologist, is only 64%. So my suggestion number one is get a second opinion. Number two, given that AI is much more correct, I suggest you get an AI opinion. Number three, here's a scary one. It takes AI 3 seconds to capture perfectly your voice. So, Herr Mark Rosen, since I know you have a good bank account, I can just 3 seconds of your voice, I can mimic your voice with the computer, call your bank account and says, sir, can you please send me some money from my account to my account, Erich. You see? So it is so scary. The scary part actually was reported in the news, if you read that. There was a 14-year-old girl in Arizona that disappeared for several years. One day, the parents got a call, and they said, our daughter has called. And they were so enthusiastic and happy because they thought it was the daughter. It was actually AI that has done it. Terrible situation. Here's something that's interesting. A lot of the AI is actually in computer programming. When pitted against over 5,000 humans, AI outperforms experts, 45% of the experts already. This is an interesting one in healthcare. Researchers used AlphaFold and to look at drug discovery, and they were able to create a drug, HCC, for a very common type of primary liver in just 30 days. You can imagine what that happens to drug discovery. So I think that one of the major conclusions that we need to walk out here at the end of the day is there is a significant improvement of productivity almost in any field that we engage with. Here is a thought by, and the title of our presentation for the day and our evening is, Sundar Pichai, the Alpha CEO, says AI could have been more profound, as profound, an implication for humanity. You know, I really think that's an interesting conversation to have today. And to ask the question, is this the hype that we should pursue? Is it really as true as Sundar Pichai says, or are there also limits? For example, ChatGPT 3 that came out in 2020 cost about $4.6 million to train. You need to train a computer to become smart, right? So to train. ChatGPT 4 that came out last year in October around took 100 million to produce. Imagine what it takes to get ChatGPT 5 going. It goes into astronomical numbers. And the question then becomes, if that gets so expensive, how much can companies actually benefit from that? If you know Sam Altman, one of the authors of ChatGPT-4, he says the game of AI is already over because the costs are so prohibitive for companies to even actually produce them. The other part that is so important is one thing. These models are called large language models for a reason, because they need large sets of data. And one of the conversations is today in discussion is, is there really enough data out there? Now for ChatGPT, for Bard, for the Microsoft, for the Googles of the world, for the Amazons, and for the Apples of the world, maybe yes. But is it really, do we really have quality data also for a regular business? So it is not always what Sunday Pinchai says. I find it so interesting how enthusiastic these CEOs of technology companies get so excited about, or sell us these new technologies, like the Google CEO here, our Alphabet CEO. I actually, 2 weeks ago, he gave a speech to his own executives to tell them that the search engine business is over. It's all now about AI. It took 15 minutes for him to give this speech, and I summarized it for you in just a few seconds. Yes, here's what he said.
AI, generative AI, generative AI, generative AI, AI uses AI to bring AI.
That's it. You're done. We know what we need to be. We are dealing with. So, and now I want to go a bit in a quick history, such as sort of like to see where we are coming from. Everybody knows this story. Everybody knows this wonderful gentleman, TBL, Tim Berners-Lee, founder of the internet. 36 years old at the time, decided that the internet should be an open architecture that everybody sort of like should embrace. In those days, in 1992, it was all this idea that we consumers will be empowered. You know, it is not just a few companies. We will all be much smarter, much richer, connecting and things like that. This one. Then it came, there is this Web 1.0, you know, if you remember, when you try to read something online, you couldn't read it, you couldn't find anything. Google came around, helped us to find that, use search engine. Then came Web 2.0, which is well known. This is the iPhone that is connected, that created a social media network. So we connect, we write, we post. We can actually read and write. As you see here, it becomes very interactive. Back in the Web 1.0, you only saw texts. Now in this world, you could also actually see video, you could even chat and things like that. And then we get into Web 3. Anybody who knows who is this guy? First name is Alan Turing. Alan Turing. And Alan Turing did what? Alan Turing. He did the Alan Turing test. Decoding the yeah, Alan Turing did many things, but he's a British scientist, AI scientist. He's like the god in AI. And in 52, he developed a test to see to what extent a computer can be as smart or intelligent as human being. So the test is, can you create or program an AI or computer that actually is as good as or as close as or exceeds human intelligence. So that's why it's called a Turing test. I'll get into this quickly. If you look at any of these developments, especially in the last 30 years, there is one thing they have done, all of them. And that goes to my point earlier that I made, and that is they created interactions, more and more interactions between things, first computers, and then between computers and people and things, and over that. That's sort of like, to me, the thing I want to explore. What happened in the last 20 or 30 years is that companies have shifted from this model of a linear value chain, namely how BMW creates the ultimate driving machine. They source very high quality materials from companies like Robert Bosch, for example, or a tire company like Michelin. They design a car, they manufacture a car, they market the car. In America, they have made the American people like us believe that they don't just get a premium luxury car, they get an ultimate driving machine. It's not just another car. And by that, BMW can sell a bigger car. That was value creation the traditional way. Design, make, sell, and buy. And I suggest that if we want to understand AI, if we want to understand any of these technologies, we need to understand that it's not about value creation in the linear pipeline model. Value is created in the interactions. Think about Apple. It's not the device that creates the value. It's the software that 34 million developers write for the 1.4 billion consumers, like you and me. It's in Apple, in Google. Google makes money because they know what you search and they aggregate those search information and they can sell that information or interactions, if you will, that your interactions with the internet, and they sell them to brands which buy them the keywords. If you look over and again, it is not, the value is created not in the product, but in the network. That, I think, is what we think. And when you think of AI, AI can do two things. Number one, it makes us, you and me, much more intelligent because we get these wonderful tools. So that's one thing. But number two, AI create or makes the interactions, those interactions that Apple uses to actually make a lot of money on the App Store, more valuable, make our entire product valuable. I wrote this book actually 2 years ago. It came out. It's called if I say that interactions are so important, I should call it interaction field. But what's really interesting is when you research how economic value is created. If your business is a traditional pipeline business, better stores, better service, better manufacturing, higher quality products, higher quality services, then you are in the world in a diminishing return. I call it the world of worlds. BMW competes with Audi and Mercedes. And for many years, the three companies are apart about 100 miles from each other, their headquarters in Germany. And for many years, they said, well, if this is Mercedes doing, BMW, we should do it so much better. If this is what Audi is doing, then we're doing so much better. They just try to compete in a particular wall and compete on being better on activities. Today, BMW, Mercedes, and Audi find themselves on that curve. Which is the company that is on that one, on the yellow one? Tesla. What makes Tesla so successful? That was last week announced. Last week there was two major announcements that proved that Tesla was right. What was it?
GM's using their.
Thank you. Thank you. Last week, first Ford and then GM announced that they will adopt the charging network of Tesla, which means that which is good, which GM celebrates as good news. And Ford celebrates as good news. Stock price went up for both of these companies. The point is this: the value of the Tesla is not in the Tesla. the value is in the charging network. It's again the network, and who creates the network? Drivers like you and me that using charging stations. And there's so much more to talk about. Did somebody say? No. So Tesla is going through that, and the stock price again has been very, very favorable, as you can imagine. Quick sort of detour on technology here. In the last year and a half, there were two types of technologies we discussed. One was the Web3 technology. And today everybody talks about AI. I'd like to sort of talk about this very briefly. Web3 is extremely important for the next years to come. And here's why. If you remember what I said earlier, Web 1 was the idea that value will be democratized. We as consumers will be all more powerful. What really happened is actually something quite different. Who got more powerful? Apple, Meta, Amazon, Google. In Web 2, when the social network started and the technology evolved, it's actually not consumers that got the benefits. It's actually a few companies got ominously powerful. Amazon is just one example. Web 3 has one philosophy, is to sort of unshackle that again. And Web 3's idea is that consumers again will be more empowered. Right now, Web 3 in its essence says, instead of your data, your information being hoarded by a few companies, the data are actually distributed, therefore decentralized in a file server that you as an individual owns. Then these ones are just applications of that idea. So what's so important is, in my opinion, is when you think of AI, and what I said so far, is AI another technology that makes a few companies extremely powerful? And that's sort of a question that I think we should all sort of think about in the next hour. Is AI just another way for Google, for Apple, for Amazon to consolidate more power and concentrate, or is AI a means to actually achieve what Web3 was to achieve, namely that we all benefit from it, small companies, large companies, and so forth. This is sort of the structure of AI. The basics is predictive analytics. If you know how AI is actually trained, it's very simple. Here on this sentence, I say, technology meets the business model. This is a sentence. Predictive analytics in AI, the way this is trained is this. You tell the computer, technology meets the business model. And then you omit one word, the word business. And then you ask the computer to predict, based on all the information on the internet and that is available, all the data, try to predict technology meets the models. What is the probability that the model is business? I'm sorry, the missing word is business. And this is how ChatGPT has been trained. And this is how ChatGPT can now sort of like give you these beautiful answers, because they use basic predictive analytics. Machine learning is the means of training AI. It's basically feeding AI a lot of data. Maybe I go a little bit into this. Basically how it works is our human brains is connected with a bunch of neurons. It sort of links to neurons. It's like a network, and that's our brains. And a computer is basically trying to write code that mimics as closely as possible that network in our brains. And I think there is also sort of like an answer to the hype of AI. Can a computer ever simulate or code all the complexity of humans' brains functioning? I think most people will say it's never going to happen. So there will always be humans that be smarter than a computer. So that's what neural networks are, basically the means to simulate those things. So that's a bit about AI. So one more thing about AI. I have asked myself, where the hell is this hype coming from? Why now? Why didn't I see that 5 years ago? Why did this happen just now? I did computer science in my undergraduate work in Germany a long time ago. So I thought that I had at least some sense of what's going on. Here's what happened. Until 2017, so 6 years ago now, computer science was divided into mostly these 6 fields. And for all these years, for 50 years in fact, this computer science developed. And every field, speech recognition, computer vision, speech synthesis, music generation, developed separately. There was a separate magazine they published, there was a separate conference they had, there were separate professors and academics and practitioners, they worked on it, and everybody worked in their individual silos. And over the 50 years of research, same conferences, same language they used, same articles they published, they knew, everybody knows each other. All of these fields worked separately. In 2007, something happened that changed that game. Because until then, all of the gains, let's say in computer vision, which is recognizing images, was very, very incremental. You know, every year, professors went to conferences, showed their paper, then somebody else wrote something, so the knowledge was only incremental. Something happened. And what happened was, actually Google and a few researchers outside of Google invented something which is called a transformer. And a transformer is a technology that transforms all these individual fields into one common language. So when you hear LLM, large language models, it is basically taking all these various fields and brings it together into one common language. That happened in 2017. And that's when AI actually took off. Suddenly, the growth became exponential, actually. That's why it's called large language model. And then something else happened. Somebody says, well, if I can bring all of these things together, what can I bring together? I can bring language, I can bring data together, I can numbers, I can bring in language together, I can also bring music together, robotics, I can bring in videos, I can bring in sound, I can stock market, code, computer code on the left side, fMRIs, your brain scan, all of these various modes I can bring together, and that's why these models, these I models, are called large language multi-mode. These are the multi-mode models. And that's what we are experiencing today. That's why we have this what's called exponential growth. Oh, you want to know where the action happens? Right here. If you look at blue, you're lucky. You're in the USA. Everything happens here. If you are in Asia, you're also a bit lucky. If you are in Europe, you're not to be found, I think. But anyway, that's a problem for years, I would think. So that's what it is. So when I think of this, AI, I hope I gave you a bit of a discourse. I really think that you must think about this one thing. Are we improving our business by improving the activities, individual activities? You know, at Vivaldi, we do write PowerPoints as consultants. Here's Jehan, actually. Jehan is our IT expert team here. Jehan just practiced. I asked Jehan to take the chapter of my first book and create a PowerPoint for me. And I go like, so yeah, that improves a particular process that we need to do as consultants. And that's sort of like helpful, you know, it's an improvement of productivity. And we actually got some good results, Jehan, you would agree. It actually works. Doesn't work very well, but it actually works. It's a good starting point. Here's what I think, and this is sort of where it's become important. If you really want to think about business reinvention, how your company is changing, how your brand is changing, would you rely on merely improving the activities, in our case PowerPoint writing a design or creating a design for a brand or an innovation playbook or something like that? Or do you think about how does business reinvention happen with new business models by using interactions? You know, in a say, how can we be like Apple, or let's say Intuit is a good example. I'll give you a few examples from our work at Vivaldi. Here's an example where we actually applied AI in a very complex situation. You can imagine a construction site, and if you know a bit about construction, construction is a terrible business in many ways. Construction, on average, the effective hour on the job, when you have a construction site like this and you want to create an apartment, the effective hours per day is 1.6 hours per day. Do you know why? Because if you put bricks on the one top on the other bricks, you have the workers the bricklayers. They come on the job. The bricklayer says, "Where is the cement? The cement, the cement. It's not here yet." Bricklayer says, "Okay, hand in the pockets." Well, I can do my bricks without the cement. I'm waiting for the cement.
Bricklayer says, "Where's the beer first?"
Oh, that's right. That's my next thing. The next thing.
Oh, sorry.
Right there. After that, they say, "Where's the beer?" And after that, they say, "I go home early today." And I watch Bayern München or something like that, or something like that. But the problem is that you have thousands and thousands of companies of freelancers. They are working on particular specialties of suppliers, let's say of bricks, of plumbing, and this, and they all need to be at the right time, at the right place, that particular construction site with the right material in place. It's an incredibly complex task. Fira was our client in Finland, and they said, "Look, this is crazy. We take 17 weeks to go from this kind of looks to an actual apartment. Can you actually improve this?" So what we did is we actually built a data model. We actually put all of those suppliers had to sign into this one platform, technology platform, and provide their data. And then we try to sort of optimize it using AI. And this is what happened after a while. We went from effective hours 1.6 to 7.5. Now everybody's complaining about working too hard. We went from 17 weeks to get this an apartment done. So on the average, the apartment to 100. It's an enormous success story where we try to get in an extremely complex environment, namely construction, and build almost a different kind of company. This is the analog company, and the company we have, they call it now a technology company that is much more scalable. So AI has an enormously powerful ability. I have to talk about Intelios because Anne Alderock is the leader at Vivaldi in healthcare and education, and is actually in charge of all of this. Think of healthcare. More than 45 million misdiagnoses are done every year. Just so you know, it's a terrible statistic because the images that a sonographer or an MRI scanner does is not of high quality. Or because the doctor gets the image and you say, "Doctor, tell me, what do you see? What do you see?" And the doctor says, "I see some shadows. I think that you should, I think you got something here." The doctor really doesn't know as well. So there's oftentimes a misdiagnosis, misinterpretation. The doctor needs to make a decision, and the doctor doesn't see as much, not often much more than you see. So there's a lot of problem in this. The way Anne has sort of conceptualized this with a client called Intelios. Intelios has 100,000 sonographers. They make images all day long. And in this AI, sonographers actually, instead of taking the image, and oftentimes, if you know it in New York, if you go to an imaging center here in New York, it happens on 79th Street, there is one. They give you a CD, and then you carry it over for your next visit to the doctor. It's actually very analog, very, very the old one. With the technology that Anne has developed with the client Intellios, the images are uploaded into a system that then the images is then matched in terms of quality, and is actually immediately fed back to the sonographer and says, you got some problems here, why don't you redo the image? So it's a very nice thing. Immediately, the system does more. It says, hey, you're always making the same mistake. Maybe you change the camera lighting, or maybe you change the angle, maybe you this. So you can actually train on the job. Once you get the image, it is then sent to the physician, and the AI tells to the physician, hey, this is most likely a broken finger that happened to me here. But hey, this is most likely a cardiovascular problem, which are more complicated than fingers, something. So it gives you sort of a guidance of what kind of conclusion it is. Today, just on the taxi, she said we has a hospital in Brazil that is actually just on the system right now, so it's going to be rolled out, the technology. So again, AI can solve very interesting things, but how? Again, because there are some interactions. You need to convince the hospital that it's not this one hospital that hoards the data. The data are shared across hospital. It's not you as a sonographer, it's actually sharing it across all the sonographers. I am finished here. I want to just say 3 things that I think I want to preempt Mike's conclusion at the end. It's sort of like what professors do with each other. You always have this one thing. And I say, what would I do if I were an executive, and I would have to face this music around AI or these new technologies, whether it's Vision Pro or blockchain? The first thing I think is it's to define the field of play. I would look at my business and say, what functions are affected by AI and these technologies, and then how do I not only just think about improving these activities, but how I can maybe solve them in a different way. And the example I gave earlier with AI, with Apple. Another one is if I were an executive, I would actually create an AI future. It can be on a piece of paper like this. It could be almost an AI future where I say, there are 4 or 5 possibilities, and I want to think about, and they affect my business in 5 different ways, and I'm going to be very alert and cognizant where the future is going. So I think that having a playbook, it's not one playbook, maybe 5 AI future-enabled playbooks, I think would be a real helpful thing. And finally, I spend a lot of time at Vivaldi. We are 150 consultants around the world. And I've spent, everybody will tell you, I have really fought very hard at Vivaldi. How can I get everybody along? It's easy for Richard, who is the president of our company here, and me to sort of like lead the future, and for Anne to lead the future. But it's very, very hard to bring everybody along. They have a day job. They work very hard. And I spend a lot of time trying this. One way we do that is we actually practice things. Jehan, Christian here, and Jesse have worked on various applications at our company. So I think those 3 things, figuring out what is really relevant for me, my business. What do I really, in the AI future, what do I really want to enable? Do I want to make something efficient? Do I want to create a new business model? Do I want to create a new product? Do I want to improve customer experience? And number 3, how do you bring everybody along? It's sort of a big problem, in my opinion.